and my apologies for being late. But with the best will in the world, even I can't control flat tires. So I suppose I'm going to be looking in a different direction today in terms of the issues that affect women, our children, and our families. And I think one of the common denominators relates to our health services. And of course that will resonate with all of us. And it's one of the reasons why I'm here today. So first of all, I want to thank you. The applause at the beginning is really touching. But let's see how I go. So thank you, UPCK, for inviting me tonight. The subject matter of whistleblowing and its recency in my life rekindled many of my lived experiences of speaking up. I do not seek to particularly speak of my direct experiences tonight. However, my whistleblowing case taught me many things, but most of all, that there are many whistleblowers struggling and are doing so as I speak tonight. My intention today is to speak to the forces, many of them corrosive and of such toxicity that they have no place in health organisations. Female whistleblowers appear to be more likely to whistleblow, and I send them my support and support to all whistleblowers for their fortitude, bravery, and I hope they have just outcomes. My presentation will consider leadership, whistleblowers, and the consequences for those whistleblowers encountering the legal system via the employment tribunal. I will reference the Francis Report, which was published in 2013, and it has really clear, visible tentacles into what is happening now. And for those of you who just need to be reminded, the Francis Report related to the mid-staff NHS scandal, of which between 400 and 1,200 people died, and all of those deaths were avoidable. And then I'm going to very quickly reflect on the Ockenden Report, published in 2022, actually March of this year, related to the lives of mothers and infants, of whom more than 200 died. The plain and simple truth, recently demonstrated in political quarters, is we, the public, need leaders cut from different timber. We need relatable, clever, knowledgeable individuals, but we also need moral leaders. Leaders who recognise a moral issue, let's say Mr. Pincher, that they can take and make a moral judgment, that they can resolve to place moral concerns ahead of other concerns. All people who are capable leaders use their moral courage, whether they know it or not. Helen Keller provided a terse analysis. She said, the only thing, Helen? Am I okay? Thank you. The only thing worse than being blind is having sight but no vision. Vision is the ability to process what we see in order to understand and act on that information. We are all blind to some things, and if we are lucky, we have friends and families to help us to see. The Francis Report provided painful insights into the lives and deaths of patients, the denial of senior leaders regarding the harm occurring in their health trust, the nonchalant and neglectful attitude towards patients' relatives, poor responses to complaints, the working environment of health practitioners being so poor as to be dangerous, and the persistent failures to adequately respond to whistleblowers. In his letter, dated February 2013, to the then Secretary of State, Jeremy Hunt, Robert Francis QC stated the following: "It is long, but I hope you will understand why I've included it. This was primarily caused by a serious failure on the part of the Provider Trust Board. It did not listen sufficiently to its patients and staff or ensure the correction of deficiencies brought to the Trust's attention. Above all, it failed to tackle an insidious negative culture involving a tolerance of poor standards and a disengagement from managerial and leadership responsibilities." Bear in mind, all of these individuals with very senior responsibilities are not volunteers. They are being paid significant sums of money. This failure was in part the consequence of allowing a focus on reaching national access targets, achieving financial balance, and seeking Foundation Trust status to be at the cost of delivering acceptable standards of care. The story would be bad enough if it ended there, but it did not. The NHS system includes many checks and balances which should have prevented serious systemic failures of this sort. There were and are a plethora of agencies, scrutiny groups, commissioners, regulators and professional bodies, all of whom might have be expected by patients and the public to detect and do something effective to remedy non-compliance with acceptable standards of care. For years, this did not occur. Francis made a number of recommendations, and tellingly, he advised Jeremy Hunt, "Foster a common culture shared by all in the service of putting patients first." Hang on a minute. I thought we built hospitals to put patients first. Have I got that wrong? So here we have a QC telling the Secretary of State that he needs to put patients first. Well, it must have been a sobering read for Hunt. A visibly dysfunctional health system where patients were not front and centre, and as a consequence, hundreds have lost their lives. Failures within systems reported by whistleblowers in circumstances where failures are known, in the context of inadequate responses, are a result of failed leadership. Francis also recommended the role of the freedom to speak up guardian. Hang on a minute, guys, the cavalry's coming. As a requirement within health trusts. I would argue such roles need to be effective, that Speak Up Guardians should be independent and external to trust organisations. I've heard Speak Up Guardians being intimidated themselves by forces within organisations so that they are unable to really help staff with concerns and may even be exposed to the very same behaviours that are bringing whistleblowers to their doors. If the Speak Up Guardian cannot be heard, perhaps because they themselves are being compromised, why would organisations seek to misappropriate the functionality of the very person and role which is to be the entrusted, watchful reporter of concerns? Why would they be doing that? Being a manager and senior lead in a health organisation is a demanding task, calling on physical, emotional, cognitive and moral strength. It is the latter that is most telling when patient crises manifest into public scandals. It is not the adversity of managing complex structures and tasks that is causal to institutional failures. It is the absence of moral capacity. The premise of my presentation is whistleblowing takes place in the context of blind leadership. The act of whistleblowing is a threat in an organisation led by blind leaders. The literature is marked by this reality and the consequences for whistleblowers, particularly regarding contentious matters in a blind organisation. The literature further reports whistleblowers experiencing silence, abuse, retaliation and bullying. And similarly, Caroline Hastings, who is in fact a nurse, has well recorded in the literature experiences of horizontal violence. And these are acts of unkindness, discourtesy, sabotage, divisiveness, infighting, lack of cohesiveness, scapegoating and criticism. And when I first read Caroline Hastings' work, and actually there's been a lot of work about horizontal violence within organisations, I thought, thank God somebody has named what I've seen in teams, in organisations, and there's a name for this. Unfortunately, it wasn't included in the Domestic Abuse Act. Perversely, some bullies, sometimes the bullies in organisations, so those who are least placed to be moral, and the sycophants are promoted, signalling the not so healthy organisation. In circumstances where the miscreants are in charge, whistleblowing will be a violent encounter. The experiences of horizontal violence perhaps is not surprising. According to US data, nurses are the profession who most experience workplace bullying. So the person who's helping to care for vulnerable people is themselves likely to be abused. So, in the UK, the Nursing and Midwifery Council in 2018 reported 89% of the workforce were female. If whistleblowers need or are forced into legal proceedings, okay, there are more barriers. The employment tribunal is in effect a process of inequity, touchingly and misleadingly referred to as the equity of arms. Actually, it doesn't mean that at all. It means that the power and finances are cogent factors, and there's not a balance in legal proceedings. So a study that was commissioned by Mary Robinson, who was then, she may well be still now, the chair of the all-party parliamentary group for whistleblowing, found in the study that if whistleblowers do not have equal access to representation and that access is similar to their employer, they're very likely that their claim is going to be dismissed in the preliminary hearing. That cases are subject to self-representation are less likely to win. So hang on, what does that mean? In order to win a case, you need legal representation. Facing employers who have greater access to expert legal support is a profound barrier. There's also important gender dimensions for whistleblowers. Compared to male whistleblowers, female whistleblowers are more likely to report health issues and are less likely to have legal representation, and even when the judge upholds the protected disclosures, which are an essential aspect of any employment case reaching the threshold for employment tribunal, that even if the judge upholds their case, they are less likely to see any unfair dismissal claim upheld. Whistleblowing cases have commonly include a discriminatory or discrimination claim, and yet they're least likely to be successful. I was extremely fortunate. However, the burden of the case and the shock of the publicity numbed me. I was clearly well represented. My case would have never reached trial without the support of so many whistleblowers who saw the plight of children and young people and the risks that they were exposed to, and the worries of some staff, and probably more that we don't know about. I'm being prompted to finish, so I'm going to wrap up. But I just want to say, I want to thank Julia Bailey, who formed an organisation called CURE, the NHS. And Julia, as a whistleblower, whose mother, Isabel, died while she was in mixed staffs. And Julia fought for 4 years to ensure that there was a public inquiry, and she was successful. She was abused significantly for her efforts. I also want to thank Rhiannon Davis and other women who campaigned to bring yet another dangerous institution into the open. However, women and their newborn babies should not be sacrificed on the scale of incompetence and, frankly, I think, institutional corruption that amounted to the Ockenden report, where, as I said, 201 babies died. And so I actually want to dedicate this really brief presentation to Rhiannon Davis and all of those 201 lost lives that could have so easily been avoided. Thank you.